What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So it is almost Thanksgiving, so I thought it'd be a fun idea to do one of those videos where I go over every single team in the NHL and say what they're thankful for in terms of this season. Could be a player, could be a line pair, could be a goaltender, could just be some overarching theme with the team, but we're gonna go through it. I thought this would be a fun idea. If you're American, happy Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. I'm gonna eat a shit ton of food, but let's not waste any time. Let's start talking about it. And up first, I got the New Jersey Devils, and for them, they just got to be thankful that they're finally healthy. When looking at it last season, they dealt with some brutal injuries. Dougie Hamilton missed 62 games, Siegenthaler 25, Jack Hughes 20, Timo Meyer 13, Nico Hischier 11. Most of their core pieces were out for at least 10 games last season. That was a main reason why they missed the playoffs by so many points. And while this year coming into the season, we thought maybe it was going to be more the same with Brett Pesce and Luke Hughes missing some games to start the season. Basically, since those guys have got back and got back in overall on the season, all of their players, for the most part, have been healthy. It's only been 23 games. Hopefully, they've been happy as well. They've been winning some games. It's only been 23 games, but it's definitely encouraging considering how things went just so south. And Jack Hughes has obviously dealt with injuries in that past. Dougie Hamilton's been a pretty injured player with his time in the New Jersey Devils. So, yeah, they're just ecstatic that they're finally healthy and they're finally playing good yet again. St. Louis, they got to be thankful for offer sheets. When looking at them, they were severely lacking under 24-year-old talent last season outside of really Jake Neighbors. So they go out, they utilize the offer sheets that we rarely see get used in the NHL nowadays, or just point blank period. They get Broberg, which we thought at the time was absurd, a 2-year deal at $4.6 million, giving up a second-round pick. He's been great for them, or he was great for them before he got hurt, had 9 points in 12 games and was a +6. I agree, plus minus is stupid, but still +6. Very impressive. As well as Dylan Holloway, a 2-year deal at 2.3. We thought that was a pretty good deal, only giving up a third-round pick for that. He hasn't been spectacular by any stretch, but he does have a solid 8 points in 22 games. He's a solid bottom sixer that can maybe be a solid middle sixer going forward for the St. Louis Blues. So yeah, good on Doug Armstrong for utilizing the offer sheets, and they're definitely thankful that offer sheets do exist, because as a result, they got two pretty promising young guys for relatively cheap. Next up, Buffalo Sabres. It's got to be Owen Power's development. When looking at Owen Power last year, wasn't bad by any stretch, but kind of plateaued in terms of his offensive production, and it's not like he took some massive defensive step. This year has been very, very impressive. He has 15 points in 21 games. All of those are at even strength. That is crazy. He's second in the entire NHL in even strength by a defenseman, only behind Mr. Cale Makar. His defensive numbers have been pretty solid. He's back on, after a little bit of a plateau, he's back on trajectory to be a top 20 defenseman in the NHL. And if you're the Buffalo Sabres, obviously having him and Dahlin for the next decade or so, they're both locked in. That could be one of the best defenseman duos, defenseman 1-2 punches in the entire NHL point blank period, like relatively soon. I wouldn't be shocked if in like 3 years we could be talking about them in that light. Very encouraging if you are the Buffalo Sabres. For the Calgary Flames, it's pretty obvious. It's Dustin Wolf. When looking at him, he has an 8-2-1 record with a 926. Last week beat both of the New York teams, the New York Rangers and the New York Islanders. He's been great. He's been absolutely lights out for them. This is a guy that won the WHL Goalie of the Year, won the Goalie of the Year twice in the AHL, won the AHL MVP, and this season finally making his mark on the NHL. Truly looks like a Vezina caliber guy. This year, he looks like a Vezina caliber guy, but in 2 to 3 years, should probably solidify himself as a no doubt top 10 goalie in the NHL. He's been slept on most of his career because he's an undersized guy, but now we're seeing at the NHL, we're seeing him be an actual stud, although he might be the result that the Calgary Flames don't have a lottery pick this year, because if it's not top 10, they lose it to Montreal. Instead, they get Florida's pick. But still, if they end up losing that pick, and because Dustin Wolf is Vezina caliber, that's definitely something they're going to have to live with. Dustin Wolf has been fantastic. Detroit, you got to go with the Edvinsson Insider pair. The rest of the defense core, pretty garbage for the most part, but when you look at it, they're two young current franchise defenseman in Seider. Edvinsson at this point, I could honestly see him end up better than Seider, and that's saying something because Seider's already a very good player, but they've been great. They've been great as a pair right now. Two big dudes in their 248 minutes together. They've outscored opponents 8-5, as well as their expected goals percentage being 57.5%, which is in line with other elite pairs in the NHL like Makar and Tays, Slavin Burns, Bouchard and Ekholm. They've been absolutely balling out. Again, Seider's only 23 or I think he's 23 years old. Edmondson is like 21 or 22 years old. They've been amazing. If you're a Detroit fan, although this, from a pure win perspective, the season has been very disappointing. These two guys proving that they're going to be legit elite players, and Sutter was an elite in prior years, is very encouraging. And they also have a guy like ASP that's playing so good in Sweden. Very encouraging for a team that's defense score stinks right now. In 3 to 4 years, it might end up being a positive. The Winnipeg Jets, you got to go with the power play. Not saying it's entirely carrying them, but this is a main reason why they're 7-4 right now. They're clicking at a 33.8%. And when looking at it, they're just moving the puck far more. They're far more dangerous in terms of just the cross crease passes and all that. And Gabe Vilardi in front of the net has been very impressive in terms of just a physical force, similarly to when I think of a Chris Kreider. He's kind of been filling that role for the Winnipeg Jets. He's been great. Power play has been great. Do I think it's going to continue to be 33.8%? No, but considering last year was only 18.8%. It was 22nd in the entire NHL. Under Scott Arniel, taking these massive strides is why Winnipeg is going to be safely be a playoff team and might end up winning the Central Division or President's Trophy this year. The New York Rangers, you got to go with the goalie tandem because their 5-on-5 defense has been so horrible. I talked about it in a video a couple days ago. They're 6th worst in terms of 5-on-5 expected goals against per 60, but the goalie tandem has a .922 save percentage. Igor Shesterkin has 5.4 goals saved above expected. Jonathan Quick also has 5.4 goals saved above expected, although Quick's only played in 5 games. They've been lights out. They've really covered up a lot that has gone wrong with this team, and that's why Chris Drury, a report came out that Chris Drury might be looking at trading Trouba and Kreider. I don't really blame him considering the 5-on-5 has been so bad, but this goalie tandem has really covered up the warts of this team. Next up for the Dallas Stars, you got to go with the Matt Duchene resurgence. We're looking at it with Robertson, Hintz, and Johnston really having lackluster starts to the season. If you told me that they were going to be 50-point pace players to start the season, you'd think Dallas is absolutely tail spinning. But no, because Matt Duchene, Mason Marchment, and Tyler Seguin have been so good, and mainly Matt Duchene, 11 goals, 12 assists, 23 points in 19 games. That's 47 goal, 52 assists, 99-point pace. Don't think he's going to put that up, but still, he has really masked some of the lackluster performances again from the Dallas Stars. So when looking at Matt Duchene, it has been awesome to see him kind of have this late career resurgence after getting bought out by the Nashville Predators. He's been exceptional for Dallas. They are definitely thankful for him. For Chicago, I'm going to go with they're very thankful for the fact that the 2025 draft has a clear top 4, considering the fact that they still stink right now. They're probably going to finish bottom 2 in the entire NHL. And as a result, they're going to be locked in to get at least the top 4 pick, if you get what I'm saying. There's not a lot of positives from this team right now. Bedard's not playing that good. So as a result, they're probably going to end up getting another franchise piece to pair with the Connor Bedard. I still don't think that they have that legit number 2 future also star. I think Leshinov's very good, but I think them getting another top 4 pick that year, whether it's Misa, Higgins, Schaefer, or Martone, that's going to be massive for this franchise, and they rightfully so should just try to tank it yet again. They're not a good team right now, and again, I still am a little bit lackluster on their overall pieces long term. Next up, the Nashville Predators. They're thankful for the fact that they have 3 first-round picks, because although it's been a disaster, they're not in some situation where if the Vegas Golden Knights just absolutely stunk it up this year and they don't have any first-round picks for the next 2 to 3 years, it's a little bit disastrous. For Nashville, they stink right now. Yes, their offseason moves are kind of a disaster, but at least they have this ramp to go off into kind of a rebuild, retool. They have 3 first-round picks this year from, I believe, Vegas as well as Tampa Bay for the Tanner Jeannot trade. So as a result, they can kind of rebuild. Right now, they do have a pretty solid prospect pool. It's 14th to 18th in the entire NHL. After this year's draft, after some other guys graduated to the NHL, this summer, they're probably going to have a top 10 prospect pool. And although some of their guys are signed long-term, I think really outside of Brady, I think Brady Shea's the only guy that is kind of untradeable, considering he has 6 years left. You might have to eat some money on Steven Stamkos or that one. You could trade Marsh, so he's only making $5.5 million. But they have an avenue to get off at this current team right now and do this rebuild because they have 3 first-round picks. They're not absolutely screwed like some other teams we've had to see completely bottom out entirely. They're pretty solid in terms of their future right now, considering some of the young guys and prospects and picks that they do have right now. Carolina, they're definitely thankful for Martin Necas. 11 goals, 22 assists, 33 points in 20 games, and he's playing mainly with Kakaniemi and Eric Robinson. That is insane. That kind of production. Obviously, he has scored a decent amount on the power play, but that has been absolutely insane. He just looks like a completely different player. He looks far more creative than you maybe see on a Rod Brindamore team. He's been awesome for Carolina. He's been their main offensive catalyst right now. Do I think it's sustainable to this level? Obviously not, but I think he can score 90-ish points right now. He's been fantastic for Carolina and only making $6.5 million. For Colorado, they're thankful for the fact that they're finally getting healthy. They finally have Nichushkin, Lehkonen, Druin after getting injured. Well, Nichushkin obviously was in player assistance program, as well as hopefully Ross Colton coming back in a couple weeks. And since they've kind of gotten healthy, they're 7-2 in their last 9 games. They're just elated to finally be healthy, considering they just barely survived that brutal start when they were hurt. Next up, we got the Minnesota Wild. You could go with Kirill Kaprizov. They're definitely thankful for the fact that they have Kirill Kaprizov. Don't get me wrong. He's probably my heart pick right now. But I think I would go with Philip Gustafsson's bounce back season, because Kaprizov's been great the last 3 to 4 years, but when looking at Philip Gustafsson, they made the playoffs off the back of him having a 931 in the 2023 season. Then he has an 899. They clearly missed the playoffs, and he's bounced back this season. In 924, they're safely in a playoff spot. So I think just having that stability and goal in a guy like Philip Gustafsson, that's still only like 25 or 26 years old, is so massive. If he can be, because Wallstedt hasn't really been good this year, if he can be that legit, consistent top 15 goalie in the entire NHL. And I still think Wallstedt has a good future, but maybe run a tandem for the next couple of years of the two of them until Wallstedt's ready to be a starter. Minnesota is absolutely thankful for Philip Gustafsson at this point. Vancouver, pretty basic, but you got to go with Quinn Hughes. He's been the one star in their team that has played absolutely lights out. At 5-on-5, when he's on the ice, the Canucks are only allowing 1.9 expected goals against per 60 to 2.9 expected goals for per 60. That is absolutely insane. He's obviously around point per game right now. He has really carried this team when Elias Pettersson had a pretty rough start, as well as JT Miller now dealing with his mental health thing, Thatcher Demko not playing. The Vancouver Canucks have Quinn Hughes to thank why they're in a playoff spot right now and why they are kind of afloat as of right now. The Vegas Golden Knights, you got to go with the top line. The top line has been absolutely balling. Eichel has 32 points in 21 games. Barbashev has 22 points in 21 games, as well as Mark Stone, who has been hurt recently, but he had 21 points in 13 games. All of them are at least a +9. They were just absolutely clicking together, and even since Stone has gone down, they've been very good. And considering Vegas maybe doesn't have the most forward depth right now, especially at the wings, having that first line be one of the best lines in the entire NHL has been massive for them having this very, very good start. Boston, we're flipping it. We go from the first line all the way down to the fourth line. When looking at Mark Kastelik, Johnny Beecher, and Cole Kopik, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. But that line really kept the Boston Bruins afloat the first couple weeks of the season. They really could have started akin to, like, maybe not defeated, but like Colorado and Nashville. They could have been at the bottom of the league, but that line was fantastic the first 5 games. And even just overall, they've outscored opponents 9-1. They have a 69.4 expected goals percentage. They've been awesome, where while their stars have kind of been lackluster and some of their acquisitions, Lois Lindholm, have kind of sucked it up. That fourth line really stabilized this team when they weren't able to score jack shit. Very impressive. Boston Bruins fans are very thankful for them. The Florida Panthers, they're just thankful that they really have locked up the core in the last 12 months. When looking at it over the last 365 days, they've re-signed Forsling at only like $5.75 million. Reinhart deal is amazing, $8.6 million. Lundell, after his start at only $5 million, amazing. Verhaeghe's only making, like $7-ish million, as well as re-signing coach or extending coach Paul Maurice. They're locked in for the most part, outside of Aaron Ekblad, who's probably going to maybe even get paid less compared to Price prior deal at $7.5 million. And yeah, they're basically locked in now for the next 5 seasons to contend at a high level. Although they had a shit week last week, they're still probably the top 3 cup favorite for sure. When looking at them, they're just very happy that they have this team set in place. No one's going anywhere. For Seattle, I am going to go with Riker Evans' breakout. You look at it, once Vince Dunn went down, you thought maybe this team's defense core was kind of cooked. Riker Evans has been fantastic. 11 points in 21 games, playing around 21 minutes a night, a pretty sizable role. His defensive numbers have been very good, playing with more so defensive guys like Adam Larson or Will Borgen. And when looking at the Seattle Kraken, they got a bunch of promising young forwards and forward prospects. They didn't really have much defensively. So hopefully this year in the draft they take a defenseman finally. But when looking at Riker Evans, the fact that it looks like he's panning out and is actually a U25 solid defenseman, that is massive for this team that, again, really lacks in terms of defensive guys. Next up, Ottawa, you got to go Josh Norris's shoulder health. There's not much to be thankful for right now if you're an Ottawa Senators fan, but I think Josh Norris, considering the fact that he had 35 goals in 2022 and 66 games, it was absolutely insane. Signed that big deal. Then he only played 9 games the following season because of that shoulder injury, then played 50 last year. It was looking like he was absolutely cooked. And don't get me wrong, he's still not worth $7.95 million. That is still a bad contract right now. But right now he has 14 points in 20 games, has been pretty solid as a second liner thus far for Ottawa, and he's playing games. He's actually healthy. That's all that matters right now for Josh Norris, considering the prior 2 seasons, he played just 59 games. It's good for Ottawa Senators fans to finally see him healthy, and they're happy that his shoulder is holding up. For the LA Kings, it's got to be Alex Lafreniere. When looking at him, you thought that the LA Kings duo was just going to be Byfield and Clark going forward. He's fully entered the conversation. It's now a young trio, 9 goals, 6 assists, 15 points in 21 games right now. After only having 23 points in 81 games last year, I thought he was a decent young player, future middle sixer. It's looking like he can eventually turn into a solid first liner. Very impressive for the LA Kings that kind of lack under 26-year-old juice at this point outside of Clark and Byfield, as well as Jordan Spence, but they don't have a ton of young players. Great to see him take that next step. Columbus, I'm going to go with their unexpected dominant first line they're thankful for when looking at it. Sean Monahan, although I didn't love the deal in terms of the term, he's been fantastic for them, as well as alongside Kirill Marchenko. And then they've switched off with Dmitry Voronkov, as well as Chinnikov, and they have outscored opponents 16-4 this season. 16-4. Let that sink in, as well as their advanced stats being very good. They've been dominant, and especially guys like Marchenko, Voronkov, and Chinnikov being younger guys that are future pieces for the next decade, hopefully, with this team. That has been very impressive for the Columbus Blue Jackets. For Utah, they're just thankful to have new fans and really passionate fans. They've really just been packing the Delta Center. When they dropped their jerseys, there was lines spanning all of like downtown Utah to cop those new jerseys. Not to shit on the Arizona Coyotes fans, but it's good to see the Utah fans really come out in droves and support this team as of right now. Pittsburgh, they're thankful for the fact that Marcus Pettersson is a pending UFA, so they can actually trade the dude. They can actually get something outside of Crosby and Malkin. He's the only guy that's going to get them anything of value in terms of like the retool, starting the rebuild. I think he's going to get at least a first-round pick when you look at his track record the prior 2 seasons as well as this season. He's been very underrated, legit top pairing, two-way guy, definitely a great second-pair guy on an actual contender. He's going to get a decent haul. You're not trading Letang. You're not trading Carlson. Those guys' contracts are kind of brutal, as well as Rust and Raquel have like 3 or 4 years left on their deal. Marcus Pettersson is the one piece that fans won't be absolutely, if they trade Malkin, they'd be distraught. Marcus Pettersson, I think they'd be like, thank you. We can actually thank you for your service. We can get something for you. We need that first round pick and solid prospect over you, who's 28 years old. We don't need to sign you to an 8-year deal. It's $6 million. Thank you for your service. Bye. Next up, the Anaheim Ducks. It's got to be Lucas Dostal when looking at him. A .924 save percentage on an Anaheim Ducks team that has been absolutely brutal. He leads the entire NHL in goals saved above expected at 13.7. He has been unreal. Again, a .924 is very impressive. When you think about the Anaheim Ducks, that's for most teams probably like a .935 if he was playing behind a competent defense, considering Anaheim has just been bleeding a bunch of shots as well as just high danger chances. He's been awesome. He's proved himself to be the franchise starter. Going forward, speaking of goaltenders for Tampa Bay, they're thankful that Vasilevsky's back is really holding up and he's been healthy. When looking at it last year, he came back from major back surgery, had a pretty brutal .900 save percentage. This year, he's kind of flipped the script. He has a .915, and they're going to need him to stay healthy and stay consistent for like 60 games this year because Johansson absolutely stinks. He has an .856 with 5.22 goals against. So right now, Vasilevsky's back is holding up. It's been great. They need it to. They're thankful that it is, but it needs to continue to hold up because he's going to have to be a workhorse like he was from 2018 to 2022 yet again if Tampa wants to safely make the playoffs. For the San Jose Sharks, I am going with Celebrini being legit. They're thankful that it looks like they have their franchise star center going forward. 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 11 games. The Sharks stink, and as a result, like his underlying numbers, his expected goals for per 60 when he's on the ice or expected goals against isn't that good. But in terms of individual stats that I could kind of pull in terms of his transitional game, he has 38 end-to-end rushes in 11 games right now. That's the second most in the entire NHL per game, only behind Connor McDavid. So although his overall, when he's on the ice, the Sharks are getting caved in, but you kind of expect that from the San Jose Sharks. In terms of him in transition, in terms of him generating shots, it has been very impressive. And once those other players get better or just they start signing better players, his overall numbers are going to become much better. And yeah, he's on pace for like 55-ish points. That's perfectly fine on a team that stinks like this. If he goes for 27 goals and 27 assists, that's great for a guy that doesn't even turn 18 until like June. Celebrini is legit. You got to be happy if you're them. The Philadelphia Flyers, Matvei Michkov's legit. When looking at him, 7 goals, 9 assists, 16 points in 19 games right now, has walked onto the team and has immediately become like the best playmaker, the engine of the offense, him and Travis Konechny. He's been awesome, basically running that power play. I just love to watch Matvei Michkov play, and especially in overtime, he's rise to the occasion. I believe he has 2 overtime winners. Kid's not afraid of the moment. Kid is definitely legit. For Montreal, similar thought process here. I'm going with Hudson's head fakes they're thankful for. But just overall, Lane Hudson being legit. He has 11 points in 20 games while he's playing the second power play. He should get bumped up to the first power play. Mike Matheson kind of stinks. But when looking at him, just so dynamic at the blue line in terms of his edges in those head fakes. Very silky in transition. Maybe he still has a decent way to go defensively, but he's not horrible as some people try to make him out to be because of his plus minus. But yeah, Lane Hudson is going to be an elite offense defenseman. Could potentially be Norris level if the defensive game is pretty solid as well. Next up, for my New York Islanders, they are thankful for the loser point. 8-5 right now. So they've won 8 games. They've lost 13 games. But because of the loser point, they're a 500 team right now. They're currently on pace for like 20 overtime shootout losses. Not sure it's going to be that bad. But yeah, they blow these games late, but at least they get 1 point out of it. It's unacceptable, but thank you for the loser point. That's why we're still somewhat in the hunt in the Eastern Conference. For the Washington Capitals, I went with their under 25-year-old core they're very thankful for, because while they definitely weren't bad in prior years, their stocks are just shooting up right now in terms of basically all of their young players right now. They went from having a pretty pedestrian under 25 core to now having a pretty solid one. Don't get me wrong. None of these guys I think are going to be like legit stars in the NHL, but a guy like Connor McMichael, 33 goals last year to now absolutely killing it, driving his own line with PLD, and Tom Wilson probably going to be around 60-ish points this year. He looks like he's going to be a very good first liner throughout his career. Alexei Protas playing on that first line with Ovi and Strome, definitely keeping up with those guys. He's not some distant third guy that kind of gets dragged by them. No, he's keeping up with pace. He's whatever, like 6'5" and can move like that. Rasmus Sandin, when he got traded to Washington, he played really good immediately. Last year was a little bit lackluster. This year playing very good as well, around half a point per game. And then Martin Ferivari also just having a very solid two-way season, very good defensively and a physical beast. Those 4 guys have been very impressive, and it makes you think that Washington can be a competitive team for a long time, considering all those guys have taken sizable steps this year, and they still have a guy like Ryan Leonard that I think could eventually be that star in the system, obviously. For the Edmonton Oilers, I went with avoiding bad injuries. They're thankful that the Nurse injury a couple of days ago wasn't something with his neck and seriously messed him up, as well as Connor McDavid. We thought Connor McDavid initially got hurt. We thought this could be weeks, maybe even months. He really messed something up. Both of the guys missed like 2 to 3 games. So they're thankful that although on first glance, those injuries looked horrible, they ended up not being too bad. And as a result, they're probably going to cruise to the playoffs. They are going to cruise to the playoffs and maybe even end up winning the Pacific Division at this point. And then lastly, the Toronto Maple Leafs. I went with the 2024 unrestricted free agency class that they signed. Stolarz, a 927 in 12 games right now. He's been fantastic, up for the Vezina right now. Chris Tanev, shut down defensively as advertised. Yes, maybe that contract, similarly to OEL, who I'm about to talk about, might stink towards the end, but right now he's well worth $4.5 million. And OEL has been that ideal puck-moving defenseman that they did need, that they lacked last year. It has just been very good in terms of their 2025 free agency class. And as a result, Toronto is sitting pretty in the Atlantic Division. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? What do you think about these teams and being thankful for? Which ones would you maybe change? I'll be seeing you in the next one. Have a good Thanksgiving. Eat a shit ton for me.